June 23, 1941, 0430 hours. Near the village of Brody, in the rolling wheat fields of western Ukraine. The air hangs thick with the scent of damp earth and diesel fumes. The pre-dawn silence shattered by the low growl of engines idling in the mist. Lieutenant Mikhail Petrov, commander of a T-26 light tank in the Soviet 15th Mechanized Corps, wipes condensation from his periscope, his breath fogging the narrow slit. You could almost feel the chill seeping through the thin armor, the vibration of the 90-horsepower engine rattling your bones. Shadows stir in the fog, hundreds of them. Soviet tanks, KV-1 heavies with their sloped plates and 76mm guns. T-34 mediums, sleek and deadly, mixed with obsolete BT-7s and T-26s from the pre-war era. Over 800 machines in this sector alone, part of a colossal force amassed by the Southwestern Front under General Mikhail Kirponos. The radio crackles to life. Forward, crush the fascist invaders. Orders from Corps Commander Ignaty Karpazov relayed from front headquarters in Ternopil. Petrov's tank lurches ahead, tracks churning mud into slurry, the column snaking toward the reported German positions. No one knows the full scale yet. Operation Barbarossa has been raging for a day, but here in the bloody triangle bounded by Dubno-Brody-Lutsk and Brody, the storm is about to break. German Panzer Group 1, led by General Ewald von Kleist, has punched through the border with 799 tanks, mostly Panzer 3s and 4s, supported by Stukas diving like hawks. Kleist's 3rd Panzer Corps under General Eberhard von Mackensen advances from the south, while 11th Corps pushes from the west, aiming to encircle the Soviets. Shells whistle overhead as German 88mm flak guns, repurposed as anti-tank weapons, bark from concealed positions. The first KV-1 takes a hit. Ricochet. Invincible, a crewman shouts over the intercom, but the chaos unfolds. Petrov's T-26 bounces over a ditch, spotting a line of gray Panzer 3s emerging from the tree line, their 50mm guns traversing. Fire erupts. A Soviet BT-7 explodes in a fireball, turret spinning into the air like a discarded helmet. The smell of cordite bites the nostrils, smoke billowing as engines rev to flank speed. Kirponos, in his command post 50 kilometers back, pores over maps stained with coffee rings. Stalin's directive from Moscow: counterattack immediately, no retreat. The Southwestern Front boasts 3,128 tanks on paper, 5 mechanized corps hurled into the fray. The 4th under Andrei Vlasov, 8th under Dmitry Ryabyshev, 9th under Konstantin Rokossovsky, 15th under Karpazov, and 22nd under Semyon Kondrusev. Against them, Kleist's 799 Panzers, but with superior tactics, air support from Luftflotte 4, and radio coordination the Soviets lack. Many Red Army tanks have no radios. Commanders wave flags or fire flares to signal. The clash intensifies by 0600. In the fields near Dubno, Ryabyshev's 8th Corps slams into von Mackensen's 13th Panzer Division. T-34s with their Christie suspension and 76.2mm guns shred Panzer IIs at 1,000 meters. One T-34, commanded by Sergeant Nikolai Dmitriev, absorbs 9 hits without penetration, its sloped armor deflecting shells like rain off a roof. Dmitriev's gunner pumps rounds into a Stug 3 assault gun, brewing it up in flames. Cheers echo inside the turret, sweat dripping despite the morning cool. But disarray reigns. Soviet columns ordered to converge on Brody cross paths in confusion. Fuel trucks lag behind, tanks grind to a halt with empty tanks. German Stukas scream down, bombs cratering the earth, strafing exposed infantry. Oberleutnant Hans von Luck, in his Panzer IV of the 7th Panzer Division, spots a mass of Soviet armor silhouetted against the rising sun. Fire Fry! His 75mm gun booms, coring a T-26.
The Germans maneuver in Kampfgruppen, combined arms teams of tanks, infantry, and artillery, while Soviets attack piecemeal, without air cover. By noon, the triangle is a cauldron. Over 1,500 tanks engaged this day alone, the ground trembling like an earthquake. Petrov's T-26 weaves through burning wrecks, his loader slamming home a 45mm shell. A German Panzer III looms close, too close. The shot rings out, piercing the side armor. Victory? But return fire shreds his track. Immobilized. Crew bails out into the mud, machine guns chattering nearby. Kirponos signals Moscow, counteroffensive underway, but Zhukov, overseeing from afar, senses the trap. Kleist aims to pocket the Soviets, cut supply lines. As the sun climbs, losses mount. Soviets lose 200 tanks in hours, Germans a fraction. The air fills with the acrid tang of burnt metal and flesh. Yet the Red Army presses on, waves of steel crashing against the Wehrmacht's precision. Will the sheer numbers overwhelm, or is this the beginning of a slaughter?
June 24, 1941. 0900 hours. The fields south of Dubno turn into a churning sea of mud and fire, the sun beating down on twisted metal carcasses that litter the landscape like fallen giants. Captain Dmitry Loza, commanding a company of T-34s in the 8th Mechanized Corps, peers through his gun sight, the crosshairs settling on a cluster of Panzer IVs advancing in wedge formation. You can almost taste the dust kicked up by hundreds of tracks, feel the heat radiating from the engine deck as his tank surges forward at 30 kilometers per hour. Fire! The 76.2mm gun recoils with a thunderous crack, the shells slamming into the lead Panzer's turret ring. A direct hit, flames erupt, the crew bailing out in panic. Loza's voice crackles over the limited radio net. Push through, for the motherland! But coordination falters. The 8th Corps, delayed by mechanical breakdowns and fuel shortages, arrives piecemeal. Ryabyshev fumes in his command vehicle, maps spread across his lap, cursing the lack of reconnaissance. German 105mm howitzers from the 16th Panzer Division pound the Soviet flanks, shells bursting in black fountains of earth. A KV-2 heavy, its massive 152mm howitzer meant for bunkers, lumbers into view. Its crew spots a German column and fires. The shell obliterates a Panzer III, but the slow reload leaves it vulnerable. Stukas dive again, sirens wailing like banshees, bombs walking across the formation. North of Brody, Rokossovsky's 9th Mechanized Corps, considered the Red Army's elite, joins the fray with over 300 tanks, including rare KV-1s. Lieutenant Colonel Nikolai Popel, deputy commander, leads from the front in a T-34. His tanks ambush the 11th Panzer Division under General Ludwig Kruwell, catching them refueling. Popel's gunners rake the stationary Panzers at close range. Dozens brew up, black smoke pillars marking the kills. For a moment, triumph surges through the Soviet ranks. "They're breaking," a driver shouts. Popel pushes deeper, aiming to link up with the 19th Corps and cut Kleist's supply lines. But the Germans recover with chilling efficiency. Kruwell's Kampfgruppen counterattack, using hull-down positions on low ridges. Panzer IVs with long 75mm guns outrange most Soviet armor, picking off T-34s at 1,500 meters. One KV-1, bogged in a stream, absorbs over 50 hits, crew inside deafened by the hammering, paint blistering, but emerges to destroy 3 Panzers before mechanical failure forces abandonment. The invulnerability myth grows, yet reality bites. Many KVs lack proper ammunition or trained crews. By afternoon, the battle spreads across a 70-kilometer front. Vlasov's 4th Corps, the largest with nearly 1,000 tanks, grinds forward from the north but suffers catastrophic command issues. Political commissars override tactical decisions. Tanks advance without infantry support. German 88s towed into firing lines devastate waves of BT-7s. Fast but thinly armored, they burst like kindling. Oberst Johannes Streich of the 16th Panzer Division reports to Kleist, "The enemy attacks in masses but blindly. We hold." Soviet airmen, what few managed to scramble, contest the skies. I-16s fighter with Bf-109s, but Luftwaffe superiority reigns. Ground crews watch helplessly as Ju-87s plaster tank columns, turning advances into routes. Lowes' T-34 takes a near miss. Concussion rattles the turret. Blood trickles from his gunner's ear. "Keep moving," he orders, but fuel gauges drop perilously low. Abandoned tanks dot the rear, crews scavenging parts under artillery fire. Kirpanos receives frantic reports, gains here, losses there. Stalin demands annihilation of the invaders. Zhukov, arriving at Front HQ, urges caution. A massive encirclement looms. Kleist's pincers close. Mackensen from the south, Modul's forces pressing east. Yet the Soviets feed more armor into the meat grinder, the 22nd Corps committing its reserves. By dusk on the second day, the tally horrifies. Soviets lose another 300 tanks, many to breakdowns or capture. Germans claim 200 kills for minimal losses. The ground shakes with ceaseless detonations, the horizon glowing with burning hulks. Popel's thrust stalls miles short of its objective, surrounded by wrecks. But deeper in the chaos, a revelation emerges. Scattered T-34 and KV-1 crews, fighting isolated, rack up staggering kill ratios. One KV-1 holds a crossroads alone for hours, impervious to everything but dive bombers. Whispers spread among German commanders, new monsters in the Red Army's arsenal. Will these supertanks turn the tide, or is the counteroffensive already doomed?
June 25, 1941. 0500 hours. Rain lashes the battlefield, turning the Ukrainian soil into a viscous bog that clutches at tracks like greedy hands. Major Pavel Firsov, in a KV-1 of the 9th Mechanized Corps, guns his 600-horsepower diesel engine, the behemoth wallowing forward through knee-deep mud. You can almost hear the sucking squelch of the earth, feel the turret's weight shifting as the tank crests a rise overlooking the Ikva River near Dubno. Below, a German pontoon bridge swarms with activity, Panzer crews refueling, infantry digging in. Firsov doesn't hesitate. Target bridge, armor-piercing. The 76mm roars, the shell arcing down to smash a fuel truck in a blooming orange fireball. Chaos erupts as Germans scatter. Popel's spearhead, now isolated deep in enemy lines, fights like a cornered wolf. Surrounded on three sides, his T-34s form a hedgehog defense, hulls facing outward. German 37mm anti-tank guns pepper them futilely, shells ping off sloped armor. A radio operator in Popel's tank relays frantic pleas for support, but static answers. Ammunition dwindles, crews scavenge from wrecks under sniper fire. One T-34, its engine seized, becomes a static pillbox, gunner claiming 4 Panzers before a Stuka bomb ends it in a direct hit. Kleist, at his forward HQ in a capture farmhouse, studies aerial reconnaissance photos. The Bolsheviks are overextended, he tells Mackensen. Close the pocket. The 3rd Panzer Corps swings north, linking with elements of the 1st Panzer Group. Luftwaffe Ju-88s pound Soviet supply columns, turning roads into graveyards of trucks and horse-drawn carts. Ryabishev's 8th Corps, low on fuel, abandons hundreds of tanks, crews torching them to deny the enemy. The acrid smoke blends with the stench of rotting wheat and unburied dead. In the south, Kondrusev's 22nd Corps fares little better. Its BT-7s, fast on roads but fragile off them, bog down in marshes. German pioneers blow bridges ahead, forcing detours into killing zones. Lieutenant Karl-Heinz von der Heit, commanding a company in the 16th Panzer, watches waves of Soviet light tanks charge across open fields. Like shooting ducks, he mutters, his 50mm guns methodically brewing them up. One BT-7 rams a Panzer II in desperation, both exploding in a tangled inferno. Kirpanos faces mounting desperation. Reports flood in, ammunition critical, air covered non-existent, encirclement imminent. Zhukov arrives by plane, his face grim under the peaked cap. Hold at all costs, he orders, but privately warns of withdrawal.
Stalin's no-retreat directive looms like a noose. Political officers execute panic-mongers on the spot, summary justice amid the wreckage. Yet pockets of fury persist. A lone KV-2, crewed by volunteers from the 4th Corps, blocks a vital road near Verba. German engineers try to bypass. The massive howitzer fires once every few minutes, obliterating attempts. Panzers circle warily, 88s dragged forward, but the mud hampers positioning. Hours pass. Finally, Luftwaffe FW-198s strafe it relentlessly, setting fuel ablaze. The KV erupts, but not before claiming a dozen vehicles. By midday, the triangle shrinks. Soviet Corps, meant to converge, now fight back to back. Rokossovsky, ever calm, organizes breakouts, small groups slipping through under cover of rain. Loz's T-34, one of the few still operational in his company, covers a retreat, turret traversing wildly. A Panzer IV closes, side shot. Loz's gunner fires first, the German brewing up, but shrapnel peppers the hull. The driver slumps over controls. German advances accelerate. Captured Soviet tanks, many superior to their own, are pressed into service, painted with hasty Balkenkreuz. Kleist reports to Rundstedt. Enemy armor shattered, pocket forming. Losses: Soviets over 800 tanks destroyed or abandoned in 3 days. Germans around 100, mostly repairable. As evening falls, thunder rumbles, not artillery, but storm clouds. Lightning illuminates fields of silent steel tombs. Firsov's KV-1, out of fuel, is scuttled. Crew marches east on foot, dodging patrols. The counteroffensive crumbles. But in Moscow, Stalin rages, blaming commanders, demanding heads. Will the remnants escape the trap or become the first great cauldron of Barbarossa?
Juni 26, 1941. Mitternacht. Lightning forken across den sky, illuminieren die zerschlagerten Remnanten des sowjetischen Mechanisiertkurs, hoddelt in Pocken rund Dubno. Colonel Nikolai Popel, sein Uniform caked in Mutt und Blatt von einem Schrapnellwund, gassert seine surviving officers unter einem camouflagten Tarp. Der Rain drums relentlessly on the canvas, drowning out distant artillery. You can almost smell the wet wool and unwashed fear, hear the labored breathing of exhausted men as Popel sketches escape routes in the dirt with a bayonet. "We break out at dawn," he whispers. "Small groups, east. Ammunition is down to handfuls, fuel a few liters per tank. The Hedgehog has held for days, but the noose tightens. German patrols probe the perimeters, flares arcing high to silhouette any movement. Mackenson's Panzers, reinforced by the 14th Panzer Division, seal the gaps. Kleist issues the order: compress and destroy. Dawn brings renewed assaults, 88s pounding from elevated positions, Stukas returning despite the weather. A KV-1, its crew refusing abandonment, holds a crossroads until overwhelmed. The commander, Captain Ivan Zubkov, fights to the last shell, then detonates charges inside rather than surrender. The explosion echoes like a funeral knell. Rokossovsky, overseeing the northern sector, orchestrates a more organized withdrawal. His 9th Corps, the most cohesive remnant, forms rearguards with a few operational T-34s. Infantry clings to the hulls, machine guns chattering at pursuing Germans. One T-34 platoon delays an entire panzer company near Kremenets, buying hours for thousands to slip away on foot. Rokossovsky himself drives a captured German staff car, maps burning in the backseat, to deny intelligence. Further south, Ryabyshev attempts to salvage the 8th Corps. Columns of tanks, many towed by others, snake eastward under constant harassment. Luftwaffe spotters direct artillery onto the roads, horse-drawn supply wagons overturn in craters. Crews abandon vehicles en masse, joining ragged infantry streams. Loza, his T-34 finally out of fuel, sets the thermite charges. "Goodbye, old girl," he mutters, as flames consume the turret.
He marches with his men, dodging dive bombers that strafe the refugees like scythes through wheat. Kirponos, under immense pressure, authorizes limited retreats, defying Stalin's stand-fast order. Zhukov supports him quietly, knowing the alternative is total encirclement. Political commissars argue fiercely, some are relieved on the spot. Reports reach Moscow garbled, claims of victories mixed with pleas for reinforcements that never come. Stalin, furious at the betrayal, demands Kirponos' arrest, but the general remains at his post. By midday, the pocket fractures. Popel's group erupts eastward in a desperate charge, surviving tanks leading, infantry following. German machine guns rake them, Panzers close from flanks. Popel is captured when his vehicle overturns in a ditch, his bold thrust ending in a prisoner column. Hundreds fall, but thousands filter through forests and ravines, evading the dragnet. Vlasov's Fourth Corps disintegrates fastest, poor leadership and Purge's legacy showing in mass surrenders. German troops, astonished at the captured arsenal, catalogue hundreds of T-34s and KVs, superior designs that will influence future Panzer development. If they had commanders like ours, we'd be in trouble. As June 27th dawns, the battle peters out. The triangle falls silent save for sporadic shots and the crackle of burning fuel. Soviet losses staggering. Over 2,500 tanks destroyed, abandoned or captured across the 5 corps. Entire formations cease to exist. Germans lose perhaps 200 panzers, most repairable. Kleist's group advances unchecked towards Kiev. Survivors straggle eastward, Rokossovsky reforming fragments into new units, Ryabyshev court-martialed later for incompetence. Kirponos, blamed for the debacle, will fall in September defending the capital. The clash at Dubno-Brody-Lutsk, the largest tank battle until Kursk, fades into obscurity, overshadowed by later horrors. Yet it reveals truths. Soviet numerical might squandered by chaos, German blitzkrieg triumphant but warned of the Med Army's potential monsters. In the aftermath, a grim legacy emerges. Captured crews face brutal marches, wrecked fields become mass graves. But seeds of resistance harden, lessons learned in blood for future victories. Was this forgotten chaos the war's true turning point in disguise, or merely the first act in a greater tragedy?
July 1941. The rain has stopped, leaving the Dubno Triangle steeped in a heavy, oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional distant rumble of artillery farther east. Scavenger crews, German pioneers and pressed Ukrainian auxiliaries move through the vast graveyard of steel, prying open hatches, cataloging the twisted hulks under a merciless sun. You can almost smell the lingering rot of fuel and flesh, feel the heat shimmering off blackened armor plates scarred by countless impacts. A young Wehrmacht lieutenant, Hans Merler, climbs atop a captured T-34, its sloped glacis still gleaming despite the soot. "Magnificent," he mutters to his sergeant, tracing the weld lines. "If they learn to use these properly—" The scale dawns slowly on the victors. Over 2,700 Soviet tanks lie scattered across the 1,000-square-kilometer battlefield, destroyed, abandoned, or seized intact. Entire depots of ammunition, fuel bowsers, and repair shops fall into German hands. Kleist tours the wreckage in his command half-track, nodding approval. A canaille of armor, he cables to Army Group South. The haul includes hundreds of T-34s and KV-1s, designs that send ripples through Berlin. Urgent orders fly to factories. Upgun the Panzer IV, accelerate the Tiger project. The myth of German technical superiority cracks here in the Ukrainian mud. For the survivors streaming east, the ordeal lingers in nightmares. Rokossovsky, one of the few commanders to emerge with reputation enhanced, reforms shattered units near Kiev. His calm leadership saves thousands, earning quiet respect even from Zhukov. Ryabyshev faces investigation. Vlasov, already harboring doubts, begins the path that will lead to betrayal. Kirponos, exhausted and scapegoated, defends the capital until encircled in September, choosing death over capture when his breakout fails. In Moscow, the catastrophe triggers fury and reform. Stalin executes or imprisons dozens of generals, but the lessons penetrate. Purges of incompetent officers accelerate, training intensifies. Captured German reports praising Soviet tank designs fuel production. T-34 factories evacuate east of the Urals, churning out thousands. The KV series evolves into the IS heavies. Dubno's blood buys time and knowledge. German crews test drive captured machines, awed by the T-34's cross-country performance. Some are repainted with Balkenkreuz and sent against their former owners, ironic duels in later battles. Luftwaffe pilots claim hundreds of kills, but admit the ground war's ferocity. Casualties? Soviets lose over 100,000 men killed, wounded, or captured in the broader border battles, the tank crews among the hardest hit. The local Ukrainians watch warily. Some welcome the Germans as liberators from Stalin's yoke. Others hide partisans in the forests. Villages burn. Fields lie fallow, sown with unexploded ordnance. For decades after, farmers unearth rusted turrets while plowing, silent witnesses to the forgotten clash. Historians later crown Dubno-Brody-Lutsk the largest tank battle until Kursk in 1943, over 4,000 armored vehicles engaged across the front when counting supporting actions. Yet it fades from popular memory, eclipsed by Stalingrad's drama and Normandy's spectacle. Soviet accounts downplay the defeat, emphasizing delaying actions. German memoirs speak of the Red Flood with grudging respect. Stand today on those quiet hills near Brody. The wind whispers through tall grass where once engines roared. Monuments rise modestly, a T-34 on a plinth, inscriptions honoring the fallen of both sides. Visitors few, but those who come feel the weight. Here, in chaos and incompetence, the Red Army learned to fight. The Wehrmacht tasted the first bitter hint that numerical inferiority might not matter forever. Dubno wasn't a Soviet victory, but it wasn't a complete German triumph either. It was the forge where the Eastern Front's brutal character was hammered out. Millions more would die before the anvil cooled. In the end, the forgotten battlefield whispers a timeless truth. Sheer mass of steel means nothing without the will, skill, and coordination to wield it. The ghosts of those young men, Soviet and German alike, still patrol the fields, asking the same question. What if the Red Army had struck cohesively, with air support and proper logistics? Could the Barbarossa have stalled here in the summer of 1941? History turned east regardless, but in the wreckage of Dubno, the seeds of eventual victory and greater tragedy were already sown.